saying to everybody, apart from a particular telecommunications company, and there's a reason. But now there's a question that has refused to leave me this week, and no joke. What exactly are Nigerians supposed to get used to? Another attack, another mass burial, another condolence message, another promise that those responsible will be brought to justice. Now this week, it was Plateau again. And that's the frightening part. Not that it happened, but many of us expected it. Recurring killings have become ordinary headlines. A mother loses her son. Her grief becomes a headline for a news cycle. Then it doesn't. And behind every casualty figure is a family that will never be the same. The country moves on. The families don't. And then there's another story. The Senate president announced 50 million naira for the Orire tragedy, 10 million naira each for the families of the teachers and the soldiers who didn't survive. Every grieving family deserves support. The question is whether our compassion is consistent. But a difficult question sits underneath. If we can respond to one tragedy this fast, why not the others? Plateau State, Benue, Zamfara, Katsina, places where people have buried their dead without a Senate plenary, without a check, without a headline. Is every Nigerian life actually carrying the same weight? Something even more troubling. Nigerians are no longer just afraid of insecurity. We're unsure of the truth. Authorities announced the death of bandit leader Sani Yellow. Then a video surfaced of him denying that. Whether that video is genuine or not, the fact that many Nigerians were willing to believe it so quickly tells you everything about the level of public trust today. Then, of course, there's another reminder about, retired Major General Rabi Abubakar, a man who once defended this country in uniform, was kidnapped and died in captivity. If a general could not be protected, ask yourself the question every ordinary Nigerian is already asking. Who is truly safe? We often talk about corruption as though it only steals money. It doesn't. It steals schools. It steals hospitals. It steals intelligence gathering. It steals confidence, and eventually it steals lives. Which is why allegations that appointments can be bought, if true, should concern every Nigerian. Not because of the money. Because when a position comes with a price tag, I tell you, public office stops being public service. It becomes an investment waiting for returns. And the priority of any business is recovering the cost. So where did we go wrong? Has our politics started rewarding loyalty over competence? Or have we just gotten used to surviving instead of demanding to leave? The greatest tragedy may not be the attacks. It may be that we've started accepting them as the norm. Nigeria cannot become a country where resilience is mistaken for justice. People are tired of condolences. They are asking for answers. They are asking for prevention. Because the measure of a nation, I tell you, is not how well it buries its dead, but how well it protects the living. And I hope it's something we sit and think about. Welcome again to Breakfast Extra. I am Queen Celestine, and today I will be having conversations with you with one of our dear anchors, Chiwete Onyema. Good morning, Chiwete.
Good morning, Queen. Listening to your monologue is quite sad how far we've come, because I remember since 2010, thereabout, when we had that bomb blast in the UN building, it was something that was so strange to us in Nigeria. And now, about 15 years after, it looks like every month we must have one conversation about insecurity, about abduction. I mean, last month makes it a year I joined News Central. I think every month as I joined, for 12 months straight, every month, there's always one abduction or the other. You talked about Plateau State. There's Kogi State as well. And the fact that this criminal, or should I say bandits, are targeting schools, it's not a good thing for us, because in no time, we just might see a situation whereby our classrooms are empty. I just hope it doesn't get to that part. But aside that, I'm interested in that telecommunications company.
I'm coming over to give you the gist. I am pissed, but I am smiling. Good morning, Nigeria. Let's dive into the conversation, Sawi.
Good morning and welcome once again to Breakfast Extra. Now, today we have a lot to unpack. We will begin with the rescue of 2 abducted students, a school principal and a NECO official in Kogi State. And of course, as concerns over school safety remains in focus, we will definitely be talking about that. Also, we will discuss the recurring flooding in Lagos, of course, examining how prevention, preparedness, and also long-term planning can help reduce its impact. And our big story looks at the growing pressure on Nigerian doctors as we examine the challenges facing our health workers and what it means for the country's healthcare system. We'll also raise awareness about cancer, focusing on prevention, early detection, and better access to care. Plus, we explore the realities of irregular migration. I mean, the factors driving it, the search for safer opportunities, and more. And also, the world, of course, respects and salutes and remembers Nelson Mandela International Day. Will definitely celebrate the life and the legacy of a leader whose impact continues to inspire generations. So stay with us for all of these conversations and more. But for now, let's take a look at the dailies for this morning.
Welcome back. Now, Chiwetel was eager to find out about my telecommunications story.
What's the problem?
For some reason, I've used my entire salary to buy data the past 3 weeks, and I don't understand. So the one that was mind-blowing was yesterday. You know, we spoke yesterday concerning the show this morning. And I noticed that my MB ran out. I'm like, you know what? I can't deal with it. I was outside. I did another at about past 3. Waking up this morning, telling me it's finished.
How much data did you have yesterday?
75 gig.
So you're telling me that you consumed 75 gig
I don't know
yesterday?
if I was the one updating all the news.
What did you do?
Nothing. I was sleeping.
Are you sure? Are you sure you're not the one responsible for the live stream of News Central? Perhaps you're the one. Maybe we just don't know.
See, you guys should fix it. But anyway, see, I cannot fathom why that would happen to me. And I'm sure it's happening to other people because, you know, I've been ignoring it for so long. And I've called them out this morning because what is that? I don't understand. Even if I was downloading all the movies on Netflix, like literally, what's going on?
It's quite sad.
Anyway, I hope they return my MB. If not, you'll be my monologue for next week, and I'm serious. But anyway, let's do the dailies. I think we'll start with the Saturday Vanguard, shall we?
Yeah, sure. Of course, the major headline here, it's quite a lot, but I'm seeing one here. There's a lot of pictures here to distract one, but I'll just focus on the Oyo abduction for now. How we were released, teacher explains. The writer, they told us to remove the blindfold, asked us to go and directed us to where we followed. His revelations sparked controversy in social media. Federal government charges 3 suspects to court. Now, if you look at the left-hand corner of the Saturday Vanguard, it talks about suicide in Delta. My daughter fought to get justice after she was raped, says father. Quite a very sad story there. And I think we need to start to have conversations as to our justice system when it comes to rape, because it's becoming too much. Another tragic story is at the top center part of Saturday Vanguard. Mary Habila. The government has legal obligation to probe suspicious death, says Oshoma. And the right-hand corner, Kwara tertiary institutions witness massive infrastructure development. That's quite interesting. 2026 FIFA World Cup final, history asking for a signature. It's going to be a big one. With the rider, Yamal's coronation of Messi's final bow. The Sorcerer and the Apprentice, their historic first meeting 19 years ago. I mean, there are talks about the conspiracy theory, right, about this World Cup final, looking at the fact that, you know, Messi was pictured, you know, 20 years ago, bathing Lamine Yamal, and then years after, both of them are in a World Cup final. People are saying, look, this looks too scripted. But let me ask, who's your money on for tomorrow's final?
I don't know. I don't watch football.
You don't watch? It sounds like you don't care.
I don't watch football, but that is
Okay, so looking at other headlines, this one is on the left. You can find it on page 27 of the Saturday Vanguard. Desiani Associates and Friends, can an acquittal undo 11 years of headlines?
Well, it's already 11 years of headlines. You can't take the headline back. So the question now is what happens after. You know, we've had that conversation here where the acquittal happened in the UK. Is it going to be the same in Nigeria, or they're waiting for her with all the charges here in Nigeria as to the monies here? So let's see. I think that's all for the Saturday Vanguard.
There's one more forgery trial. Inside the reports landed ex-minister Naji in the dock. That's quite an interesting read as well, because it's one. This was another controversial situation where, if you ask me, I think our Senate was somehow found wanting yet again. But then again, we keep it moving like we always do in Nigeria.
God help us.
That'll be all for the Saturday Vanguard.
Oh, let's do the Saturday Telegraph. Perfect. Right at the center, government must decapitate bandits, kidnappers, and their enablers, says ACF. Says organization not in support of amnesty for criminals without accountability, and insists the government more interested in politics than security. And we also see that it says lack of political will is not helping in fight against insecurity. And underneath, SA xenophobia, Akin Terinwa Olukoju Igali disagree on reciprocity. We can apply policy via retortion, seek repatriation. Nigeria's ability for reciprocity limited. We should engage. And of course, beside it, custom releases 7.61 billion naira to PFAs for 4,237 retirees payment. Yay! Not sure how much we'll get to each people, but let's hope that it's something. And bill proposes 49 extra NAS seats for women ahead of 2027 polls. I see that they're making seats for women these days to be involved in politics, and that's good. And NLC says power privatization, biggest scam. Workers yet to get 10% equity 13 years after sale. Wow. And Tinubu signs executive order on virtual assets. I think I have two more. South Africa firms final for feature of Emefiele's property, $2 million in share certificates to federal government. Of course, Orire's tragic incident. Well, thank God they're back home. The brother and the wife of slaughtered teacher plead for his remains for burial. And I think that'll be all for Saturday Telegraph.
The next daily we're checking out this morning is the Saturday Tribune. And the big headline there, of course, still talking about the Orire abduction. After 56 days in terrorist den, the commander came smiling and said, "We are free," says Orire teacher. That's quite suggestive. If he's smiling, I'm tempted to think right now, did he receive an alert or no? Sorry, I take that back. Did he receive some cash? For him to come smiling, telling them they're free.
Cash, foodstuffs, motorcycles, whatever it is, if he did receive it, for him to smile, that means there was something. Because if you smile, that means you're happy about something.
Plus, remember they said when the military officer in charge of the operation talked about how they had to go through a lot of battling with the insurgents involved in Nigerian military. And every other security forces. It sounded as though there was a little bit of a battle, because there's also claims that, some soldiers lost their lives. So I'm just here thinking.
They said they fled and left.
Exactly. So I'm wondering if someone would flee, would the person come back telling teachers and smiling? There's
even one way, they mentioned that when their clothes were smelling, they washed it.
They washed it. So it's quite, this gives, is an insight to the fact that we need to have conversations as to if truly, exactly, why are you smiling to come tell people that they're free? If you haven't achieved your aim or your goal. I think we'll focus on the fact that they came back home safely. Let's just focus on that. Anyway, the writer says federal government charges 3 for terrorism, concealment, illegal mining. General Williams backs Makinde's call for international probe. My wife experienced in the forest is 2 months what I learned in 36 years, says Professor Lamu, husband of abducted school principal. There's a headline on the top left corner of the Saturday Tribune. How 5-year-old girl spent 8 days in captivity before police rescue. I was cheated by my gang member on ransom being paid, says suspect.
So if he wasn't cheated, he wouldn't have said anything.
That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. This one is another quite very, very sad story. I don't even know how to think about it right now. But it says, a menstruation saved me from being raped after attack by armed Bororo Fulani. Victim narrates that. You can find it on page 3 of the Saturday Tribune. Supreme Court restores final for feature of Emefiele's multi-billion-naira assets, $2.045 million to federal government. Over 300 people were killed in one day, 176 still in captivity in Kwara, yet our government is inactive. This is by Adamu Isa, the Kwara State PDP chair. Eminent Nigerians bid ex-Ogun First Lady's mother farewell. You can find that on page 13 of the Saturday Tribune, and that will be all right now on the Saturday Tribune.
Okay, I think we should do the Saturday Sun next.
Yeah.
Of course, again, we go back to the Orire incident. Our 56 days in hell. Rescued school teachers recount horror in Oyo Forest. I never thought I'll see my family again, says the 15-year-old Taiwo. Pretty sad. And even if it's my husband's bones, please give us to bury, says the widow of slain teacher's wife. The federal government drags 3 suspects to court. Now, below that, it said, insecurity, how communities move against bandits with local forces. Non-state actors are squaring up against kidnappers and other criminals. And right at the top, I spent 2.2 million naira on Habila's strange illness, says Umahi. So he's coming out to have that conversation.
That Habila's story is quite strange.
Well, let's see how it turns out.
The fact that her parents are saying that they don't want to carry out an autopsy, looks like perhaps she had an underlying
illness. And he said, you know, she was like a daughter to him. So if that correlates with the parents. But of course, the story is still uncovering, and then we'll see how that ends. Raining season, experts offer tips against flooding, environmental degradation. Very simple. Keep your environment clean to start with that. Ishola Williams, Igbo youth leaders back Makinde's call for international probe. That's for the Oyo school abduction. And beside it, 2 communities, 1 broken lifeline, collapsed pedestrian bridge brings anguish to Ibadan communities. And we're working hard to fix broken bridge, says the council. And last but not the least, I'm sure Chimite would like this, BBL actresses taking over Nollywood, says Mojisola Adebanjo. Well, let's see if the script will still be the same.
Quite interesting. But just to put it out there, I like it natural, just so you know, since you said that too.
Yes,
so I'm not interested in that.
What is our next paper?
The next paper is the Saturday Punch, and I'm seeing a headline here. I just can't ignore it, but I'll come to it. But let me just go for the major one first. The legal advice deepens Umahi's death misery. With the writer, Nurse Habila healthy before tragedy, says DPP suspects invited. Family petitions IG demands body for immediate burial. Interesting. Now, the headline, top central part of the Saturday Punch. Why we can't use condoms with our wives, explain Nigerian men. Do you understand the economy right now? If you understand the economy right now,
well, as long as they can handle the economy, do whatever you want.
Okay, it's fine.
By all means.
But I'm just saying, you should need it at some point. This other one on the left-hand side, I thought this case was done and buried, but it looks like it's rearing its head again. Frank Ado's alleged lover demands 100 million naira from estranged wife. Interesting. House indicates lure elderly citizens into crime. You can read that on page 23 of Saturday Punch. We waited for ransom call, but received my father's corpse. Oh dear, says daughter. Oyo abduction, 3 face life jail as ex-general backs probe call. Emefiele finally forfeits mansions, $2 million to federal government. A Dangote refinery raises $2.5 billion, may go public in August. All right, so these are the headlines, of course, on the Saturday Punch.
Well, I think that's all for the dailies. And of course, we can see that the issues are still about the Orire abduction and, of course, the Umai incident with his daughter, alleged daughter, and, you know, little other things. Well, it's going to be a packed Saturday with Chiwete, and we'll go on a short break. When we return, we'll be talking to our correspondent, Mono Balagubu, about the Kogi school abduction. Just stay with us.
Welcome back. Still Breakfast Extra. Now, let's kickstart our conversation. Now, amid the rising insecurity across the country, attackers on July 15 stormed government secondary school in the Olowa community of Dekina, a local government area which was serving as a National Examinations Council, NECO Examination Center. Now, they abducted 5 people, including the school principal, a NECO ad hoc official, and 3 candidates. The incident sparked widespread concern, not only because of it targeting an examination center, but because it once again highlighted a growing threat insecurity poses to education and the safety of students across the country.
And following the distress call, security agencies launched a coordinated rescue operation involving the military, police, the DSS, the Kogi State Vigilante Service, and local hunters. Now, under sustained pressure from the security teams, the kidnappers fled, abandoning the victims who were later rescued safely. Now, here's our big report by our correspondent, Mono Balagubu. Oh, well, I think subsequently we're going to bring that report to you guys. But we have Mono Balagubu joining us this morning. Good morning, Mono.
Good morning, Queen. Good morning, Chiwetel.
Well, so, Mono, while we wait to, play your report for our audience, let's just, talk about this situation in Kogi State. Now, based on your reporting and, of course, the conversations with the security personnel and the residents there, what were the biggest security gaps that, they mentioned that allowed the kidnappers to strike that day?
Wow, fantastic question. First, it's the location of the school. The state government's reaction, has been the fact that they had closed down that school during the press briefing that the governor had when he received the abducted persons from Olowa. So he was sort of, dumbfounded and, trying to understand why that particular place would be used for the examinations. And, walking through the space of that particular school, it's so unprotected. It is detached from the community itself. There were other buildings, that were built that looked much more better than that particular block of classrooms. There are 4 of them, but the first one up about my left from the visuals you're seeing now is actually the classroom. And according to the students we spoke with, they said 8 persons were writing exams, but I think we got a more clearer picture yesterday when the governor received the abducted persons, and they said about 10 persons were in that classroom. They were actually writing literature, so that explains why many students were not writing the exam at that particular time. And from the visuals you can see, it's right in the bush. I mean, there are some kind of vegetation and trees that you really don't see on a normal day. Like if you're walking past, a vast span of land that it's all vegetations and trees. And everything is, this kind of trees that intertwine, they're not too long, but it covers everywhere. So speaking with the security operatives, even if they were to raise an alarm, even with the gunshots, it was very difficult for them to actually have a clear view of what was going on. So that made them prone to the attack. And according to one of the rescued students that we interviewed, he told us that he just saw, a man with a gun. And then, that was all he could just remember, and they picked some persons, which happens to be the principal, the NECO official, and 2 other students. And that's just what actually happened.
Of course, hearing what you just said now as regards the abduction, looking at the terrain and looking at where the school is situated, from the visuals we saw on TV, that place looks deserted. And I think perhaps maybe this led to the government assuming that this particular place is a special center, because that was what they accused of the place of being. And NECO has come out to debunk that. But from what you saw over there, do you think that that place looks like somewhere that has been utilized for quite some time when it comes to NECO examinations?
Speaking with the local chief of the community, he's also he talked about the fact that they've been using that particular place for years. They've been using that. That's not the first time they've been writing exams there. So he could not really confirm if that place is a miracle center. Of course, residents from his community write exams there. But you discover that the examinations were postponed. So the attack did not really stop students from writing NECO examinations. There is a mission school, nursery and primary school, which is just, if you're entering the community, that is where that school is located. And that is more safer. It's more close to the community. So that was a particular place that they were writing their exams. So the location, makes me wonder why, if NECO is going to conduct examinations, the choice of the location itself, as to why they won't be, writing examinations in that place when there are other alternatives which are more safer structurally, and in terms of the security, the presence of people in the community to witness and ensure that they are able to write their examinations safely. So those are the details that I got. That's not the first time they've been writing exams there, but as to whether it's a miracle center or not, I think that will be for the candidates. But do you think they would want to say that that's a miracle center? That's another conversation to be had.
Well, Mono, you've mentioned, I think my concern again, which was also your concern, is why this particular building, and the principal was part of people that was kidnapped. Were you able to get any information from him as to why that building has still, looked like that years after? Is it that, a development is not getting to this community, or there's something about the building that, he's holding on to? Because really, looking at it and having, 10 people without security go to write exam in that building, it's quite, sketchy.
Queen, I would not want to jump the gun on my conclusions, because even during the press briefing with Governor Usman Ododo yesterday, he said he's not going to jump into conclusions, that there will be investigations as to ascertain why that place was used, despite the fact that they said that the school was closed. But I must be truthful in my reporting. While walking to that particular class, that block of classrooms, there is a renovated, well painted with the roofs intact just before that particular block of classrooms. So I wonder, if you look at through some of the visuals, especially where the general of the military here at the Chai Barracks is here in Lokoja, he was actually there, He was not looking official. He was more of like battle ready. He was actually, sitting in front of that particular renovated block of classrooms. So it begs the question, why not that facility? Why does it have to be the other facility? So in my honest reporting, you have block of classrooms that's well refurbished and it looks modern, and then you have the other one that is inside the bush, just a little bit further from where that particular location is located. So those are, answers that, those are questions that really needs answers. So why not use that one? Why use the other one? And at least, although we've been promised by the state security operatives that they will get more facts about that. But all I can tell you for a fact is that the principal said that that's not the first time that they've been writing examinations in that particular block of classrooms.
Mono, how about the community now? I mean, having had these recurring kidnappings, how has it affected the daily lives of residents, particularly movement, schooling? You said they still wrote exams, of course, even the next day after the abduction. But how is business and how is farming over there at this point?
You know, when we walked into the community, we saw people going about their normal activities with, of course, security presence, everywhere. There was somewhere in the bush, somewhere, in the community itself, while somewhere in the other end of the community, that's where the bush is, where the school is actually located. And so people were going about their normal activities. But speaking with the students who were writing the NECO examinations, one of the students told me that they had quite a number of students that started the examinations, but some of them have refused to return to finish their examinations, and was just pleading for more security presence so that they can actually be able to go to school. Like they have dreams, in this remote community, and they want to be something in life, and they have, it is their right to, want to have a good education and, further their schooling so that they can actually become something in life. So definitely it has affected, speaking with the traditional ruler the day before the announcement by the state government that the kidnapped persons have been rescued. We talked about the fact that there's so much fear. People are scared about going to farm and going about their normal activities. So that tension, was there. And elderly women that we spoke with, made a plea for security presence to remain for 6 months. So that tells you, the impact of the attack. And she also made mention of the fact that that was not the first time that there had been an attack in the community prior to that. But some other persons I spoke with said, this is a peaceful community. It came as a shock. They've never had it like this before. And just hoping that, security operatives can be more present there. Of course, you have the local vigilantes who operate at the local government level. Most of them are definitely are residents from the community, because I had interactions with them. And the key point for the local vigilantes who we spoke with was that just the location. So there's no way to know that something is happening there. So before they could run to the place, they were only able to rescue one person. And of course, pending when the Joint Security Task Force, including the military, the police, doubled up efforts with them to mount pressure around the community vicinity that led to the, those who captured them to release them to back into the community.
Yeah. Well, Mono, thank you so much for this update, and I trust you will follow up, because we are invested to understand why leave the already, developed and renovated building for that shack for an exam. We appreciate your report, and thank you for joining us. And I cannot wait to speak to you again to find out how this pan out. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Investigations are ongoing, and in due time, according to government officials, they will tell us.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mono.
You're welcome.
Of course, this is yet another troubling reminder of the security challenges facing many communities across Nigeria. Now let's go on a short break. When we return, we start another conversation. Just stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's dive right into our first big story. Now, over the past few weeks, we have examined the devastating impact of flooding across Lagos State, from the health risk it poses to the damage caused to homes, businesses, and livelihoods. Every year, as the rains come, many Lagos residents are forced to confront the same reality: flooded streets, displaced families, damaged properties, and growing concerns about safety. But beyond the immediate impact is a bigger question that continues to demand answers. Why does Lagos continue to experience severe flooding year after year, despite repeated interventions, investment, and government promises? And billions of naira have been allocated towards environmental management, drainage infrastructure, and flood control measures.
Yet for many residents, the question remains whether these investments are producing the desired results. So today, we shift the conversation from the effects of flooding to the systems behind it. What explains Lagos' recurring flood crisis? Are existing solutions effective? And who should we hold accountable for ensuring that Lagos becomes more resilient against flooding? Join us for this important conversation is Ayoyinka Oni, Project and Construction Manager, and of course, Sokofora Odozi, who's an editor from We Are GST, a group focused on research, public awareness, and conversations around issues affecting society. So we have Koforo Rola join us virtually, and we have Ayoyinka join us right here in the studio. Gentleman and lady, thank you so much for joining us on the show
Good
today.
morning. I think, I don't know if I should start with Ayo, who's here with us, or I should start with the beautiful Kofo. Kofo, let me start with you. You know, being a part of, some research that has to do with public awareness and conversations about, issues that affect our lives, what would you say is the gap between Lagos, or let me just say Nigeria, okay, our focus is Lagos, and, the flooding that's been recurring all these years?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So I definitely think there's an accountability gap. As you said, there has been billions of naira pushed into flood control and trying to solve this issue that is recurring every single year. But then citizens are not actually seeing the results of this massive amounts of money. And what we're seeing is that communities are continuously submerged year after year, despite this continuous pushing of money into flood control. So there's a huge accountability gap between the money that is being allocated and then what is actually happening. So what we need to see is something a bit more than just allocations, something more than just the government saying that they've allocated this amount of money, this billions of naira, they're starting this new project, but we actually need to see something happen because yes, money has been pushed, but then there's still no change. We're still seeing people's vehicles, people's livelihood being taken away by this constant flooding. We're seeing so much reactiveness rather than actually being proactive to combat the flooding because it's not a new thing. Lagos is a coastal city. Rain is going to fall. So it should not be a surprise that flooding is happening in Lagos. But then every single year, it's just like the government is just finding out that, oh my God, it's going to flood this time around. So that accountability is really just where the gap currently exists.
Now, let me come to you now, Ayoyinka. Looking at the Lagos flooding, it has become, of course, an annual conversation, right? But the situation appears to persist despite, several interventions. Based on your analysis and your research, what do you think is responsible for the recurrence of flooding in Lagos?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. The issue of flooding in Lagos is basically what we term the climate situation of the country, and also the climb of what Lagos is. What is Lagos? And you just need to understand that it is a low-lying coastal road. This is a coastal city that's just by the right of the Atlantic Ocean. So, and the Atlantic Ocean, the shoreline is about 180 kilometers. That's what we are facing. So when you have a city that was built on this coastal line, of course, you're going to expect flooding. So we have made a lot of mistakes in the past on the process in which approvals of building and also giving. Let me give an example. The entire Atlantic was dredged and sand-filled. Why do we have a mangrove swamp in front of an Atlantic Ocean shoreline? Because that mangrove swamp receives the water. But what do? You went to sand-fill that place and you are building on it. So basically, you're compressing the soil. Because the ground is the right foundation before you create your foundation. So the climate change issues, the flooding, the underground water, the constructions, and also there's one we don't talk about, which is the sinking due to excess borehole dredging and extraction in Lagos. You know, so all these things combined together causes the flooding. Of course, you now had waste management issues and all that, but you see the main problem is the climate change, which is affecting, in fact, let me say it here, Lagos is one of the sinking cities. There are 10 major sinking cities in the world that have been scientifically studied that they are going to be sinking in 211. Some people have now brought it back to 2050. Lagos is part of the first 5. And many of these cities are working on preventions and all that, but we basically are joking about it, just like she said. There's no accountability. It is April in 2026, June, that the governor of Lagos State was just approving dredging of the drainage system and the lagoons. Why are you doing that in June when rain has already started? So we are not really doing anything concrete. And I'm going to quickly point you to a country who is getting it right, the Netherlands. The Netherlands are the prime example, and everybody can learn on how to quickly solve this problem because they have been there. In 1953, there was a serious crisis in that country that killed over 1,800 people. And an engineer was warning them that this method we are using is not working. And after that 1953, they have done a lot of jobs, a lot of research, a lot of experiments. In fact, the UK and the US had to learn from the Netherlands, especially the New Orleans, that is also sinking, on how they can, and they have been working together. But we here, we are still doing massive construction in Lekki and all that, Eco-Atlantic causing us problems. We are still doing more, the coastal line and all that. We are basically just causing more problems for ourselves. So you are causing problems, you are doing journey. You are causing problems, you are doing journey. Left for me, all construction should stop on the island.
All constructions?
Yes. We are not saying we are going to grab. You know what they did in Netherlands? They relocated about 25,000 people. Relocated them. It was that, but they had to make sacrifices. We are not saying the government should go and take everybody's land. But you have to first stop the construction and do a very sustainable case study. There's a professor in this country. The professor is getting old now. His name is Professor Dapo Longe. He has done research. He's an engineer in water resources and all these areas. Specifically, he has done research in all these things, even PhD to abroad. He gave a lecture recently saying that he was part of the people that did some water infrastructures in Lagos in the 80s, 1980. And when he came back after 10 years from abroad to go and study that infrastructure, about 6 of them were not functioning anymore. No maintenance. So we have terrible maintenance system. There's no accountability. We have a country, a state that is sinking, basically sinking, and we are causing more problems for each other. We have to stop construction on the island, do a very intensive study, and work on a long-term solution to our problem and the immediate solution. What are the immediate solutions? Clear your drainage, the waste management system and all that. But there's a bigger issue you have to handle. The technology, the know-how, and the process with Netherlands. Netherlands built a floodplain that is as big as the entire Lekki, just so that their shoreline can be receiving water. It's an engineering process. But yeah, we're joking about it, and we think that it's just something minor. I want to quickly trade blames. Oh, it's you that is throwing water on the floor, throwing paper on the floor. No, it's bigger than that. You have a sinking city. And in fact, what is state in nature is that it might even eventually sink. You can't do anything about it because water will move. But you have to make sure you prevent it. It's not that Netherlands is not sinking anymore, but Netherlands has learned how to live with nature. They have learned how to manage nature. You know, they have built some buildings as the flood is rising, the building is rising. Technology everywhere. We are missing that in our country, and we need to really work fast.
Wow. I was really focusing on the conversation, the research, because, Kofo, let me come back to you. Based on all that, I have said, you could see that he's pointing, really severe issues that's been long overdue. Now, of course, we have the Lagos Coastal Road, and of course, there's always construction and sand filling. It's obvious, Would you say that, again, our government is not willing to focus on the issues as to how to fix the country? Because it's like every year we're coming out to say the same thing. How do we send this message across to the government to say, if you don't do it now, then the place you're governing will not be there anymore? What do you think we can do, we as the citizens, because we're the ones being affected in these areas,
I think it's very important that we as people learn how to demand transparency, especially when it comes to the budgets and the monies that are being spent in our communities, because like at the end of the day, it's really just our money that is really going back into the system. So it's very important that we as people know how to ask for tracking of this expenditure. Like, for example, there was 106 billion naira that was pushed into solving drainage problems, but then we're still flooding. So where did that 106 billion naira go? Who is asking any questions? No one is asking anything. We're just, okay, oh, they put 106 billion, but we're still flooding. We're not demanding any sort of accountability from the government. We need to ask them. We need a transparent assessment. We need to be like, okay, these projects, who are the people that this funding was given to? What were the things they did? What were the tools that they bought? What actually happened with that money? We need to follow up with these projects and demand that to know from point A to point B what were the things that were actually done. And then we as, I guess, as a society and as people who are affected by this flooding, because something that we're not even, I guess, really touching is the economic crisis of how this flooding is really affecting people's lives. We're seeing that the Lagos economy might lose up to like 50 million naira because of flooding in just one single day. So, as he said, we're treating it as like a minor issue. We're not realizing just how big of a problem is, how of a large scale this flooding is, because it's not going to stop today or tomorrow, especially with how the government is treating it as something that's just little. So it's very important that we stand up and demand to know what is happening with the monies that are being spent, because money is budgeted for it every single year, but yet somehow we still have this problem every single year. So, yeah.
So, Kovo, when we look at the situation of flooding in Lagos, especially what this year's episode, I'll put it that way because it's something that happens every year. Of course, people talked about the fact that the Lagos Calabar coastal road, which I hear is now named after the president, but then that's story for another day. But then the coastal road construction has contributed immensely to the flooding that we've had this year. So it looks like the citizens are pointing to the government, and of course, we heard what the Minister of Works said, that no, that there has always been flooding in Lagos, and he's pointing back to the citizens. I just want to know how much human activity, when I say human activity, I'm talking about citizens now, how much percentage of human factor has contributed to Lagos flooding over the years?
It's definitely a mixture of both. There's the climate issue, there's the waste management issue, but then we have such weak enforcement when it comes to our fiscal planning laws. So it's very easy to point figures and say, people are not dumping their refuse well. And yes, that is happening largely in Lagos, but that is not the reason why Lagos is flooding. We have very, very weak enforcement. No one is enforcing anything when it comes to how refuse is being dumped or managed. I think was it a few months ago where they tried to do this, everyone is coming out to pick up waste on the streets. That's a very, very reactive response to the flooding, because now that rain is falling, now that the streets are already flooded, now people should go and pick up refuse from the street. So it's just like, where is your enforcement? Where does planning come into how the government is thinking about Lagos in a long-term way? Yes, people are dumping refuse, but then how has the government been trying to avert this long before this flooding actually started?
Wow.
So Kovo, I just want to know, so are you saying that environmental sanitation that was just reintroduced into Lagos would not have any major effect?
Right now, with the way the flooding is right now, it feels more reactive. That's what I'm trying to say. So I'm saying that it doesn't feel like it was something that was planned. It feels like they're just rushing to do it for PR or just to save face. But then if it was something that was planned over a series of time, then maybe we could have seen it change the way Lagos is being flooded now. But then the way the response is just happening, oh, let's go do this now, oh, let's go do that now, is not sustainable, really.
Right. Well, Ayo, when we talk about this flood, it goes back to a lot of, I remember when they talked about, people coming out on Saturdays, to come and do sanitation. And I was wondering, I was born in Lagos. Back then, every Saturday, that's how you know who your neighbor was. This one come out, cutlass, rake, and different things, and everybody will clean the environment. We've talked about the situation of clean environment, and then, of course, the government had mentioned that they don't have a lot of trucks. Most of the trucks are private owned. And we've seen in Ojota clearly how the trucks line up just even to dump the refuse. And going back and forth, there's so many, situations as to, the flooding, the drainage and everything. But you also mentioned something about the professor in terms of we are not looking at the major problem. We're looking at the surface, just like Kofo said, it's like a PR work. We're looking at the dirt in front, but, we're not talking about the constant drilling because Lekki water is not clean. So people are, drilling to get good water. What would you say the government need to go and reopen? Because now, of course, people are here. They're paying massive rent in Lekki to stay close to see the waters. Now you don't need to see the water. The water is coming to you. How do you think the government can go back? What should they be focusing on? How do they need to go back and say, you know what, let's start from scratch and fix this? Because really, it doesn't look like it's just the water now and the drainage that's the issue. It's bigger than that, like you mentioned.
Thank you so much. When we talk about Lagos, many of us were born in Lagos, even though probably we are from another state. So basically, this is where we know, and it's a very great concern. When the Lagos government spoke about the sanitation and all that, I wrote an article that was published, and I told them it was not going to work. It's not rocket science. It's not going to solve the waste management problem. It's not going to prevent flood. And it was basically, I was like a prophet of doom. But basically, if you step out of this studio now, before you walk 1 kilometer, you see refuse on the road everywhere. And we have been doing this sanitation. So that is not the solution to the waste problem in Lagos. Lagos is a city of over 20 million people. Netherlands is just 18 million, a country. That means, and statistics even say 2,000 people coming to Lagos every day. That means it's increasing. So basically, you are going to be generating more than 10,000 tons of waste every day. So you cannot have a substandard waste management system and think you're going to blame the people for refuse everywhere. It's not the people. It's because you have not used the money you are making to get your system to be updated. Create an excellent system first. Then you can blame and put enforcement on people that are failing on it. So we don't have proper waste collection. We don't even have enough waste collection system in Lagos. We don't have a decentralized waste collection system in Lagos. And we don't even have changing waste energy to well. They're just about to do one, which I know they will not even complete maybe 3 or 4 years. They just allocated it to an American company that even decided to do it. So the waste management system is a failure, it's failing. And it will continue to fail until they go to the root cause. But how it affects the flooding in Lagos, if I'm going to give a percentage, let's say maybe 10%, it's not a major problem. What it causes is the health issues. And that's what we're not even discussing. When there's flooding, the flood carries a lot of the salt water from the ocean, debris and all that. There could be typhoid outbreak, cholera outbreak, diseases that you can't even continue to mention. As I'm speaking to you, a lot of people that are living in makeshift houses are already with a lot of disease. People are dying, but it's not making the news because they're poor people and all that. It's because some of us probably are living in a rented apartment and we don't have access to we must warn Lagosians. Don't go into flood water and start playing. It's not a joke. You can get infected with disease from those places and it can move. Some of these diseases are communicable and all that. So those are what those debris and all that can cause, but it's not really what's causing the flood. What is causing the flood is because the fact that we have a climate change that you cannot control. So when you have a climate change that you cannot control, which is a worldwide issue, you have to make sure your system is perfect. That is why the studies keeps on changing. It keeps on changing. When people say 2,100 years, that's 2110, in Lagos we have seen. Some people are saying it's now 2050 because the climate change is getting worse. And that's a general word, that's another issue on its own. So what do? You have to stop the terrible things you are doing. You have to perfect your drainage system. You have to control, go back to the water problem. People cannot be digging borehole everywhere around Lagos. You have to have a central water system. Go back to it. Because as you are digging the borehole, that is two things actually. Because you are digging, because I use the word subsistence. It's something I don't want to use so much engineering term, but it's sinking. You know, that's what is happening. So that Lagosians do not get confused. So everybody's digging. And you know what's funny? In 100% of the borehole digs majorly on the island, basically it's only 30% that they get water. So they just dig unnecessary borehole and you are taking water, it's not replenishing quickly. You are giving space. So many problems. We saw the problem that Eco Atlantic caused. We did not accept it and we are going ahead to do a coastal road. Do you know what happened when they started Eco Atlantic in 2008? 3 years later, there was a major flood that killed 16 people on that construction site. And many Lagosians don't know. That is why they did the water wall. But what did the water wall do? The water wall only protected the Eco Atlantic. The remaining problem goes to the entire Lagos. So when water is hitting the wall and it cannot go, it goes left and it goes right. And it's going to be going under Lekki, Eco Atlantic, onto the mainland. So if you think it's only the island that's going to suffer, no, let me explain. If Lekki is sinking is not just that all the buildings are going down. There will be buildings that will be falling. So every neighboring community, debris is coming your way. So even though your community is not sinking, the water will come and meet you. Buildings will come and meet you. Whatever. So you have to think about the issue. When I told you 1,800 people died in Netherlands, it's not a joke. Because they do not have a system that will tell them flood is coming. So technology is needed, engineering is needed, accountability is needed, seriousness. They must go and listen to politicians from Netherlands. They tell you if you don't have a political will, you cannot do it. They spent billions of pounds to solve the problem of flooding in Netherlands. Yeah, we are seeing the budget, we are not seeing the result. All this have to stop.
Ayo, would you say that the government is waiting for us to get to that place where we're losing so many people before they take this seriously?
That's what happened in Nigeria. We basically wait for problems to escalate, they will now start coming out. And we see the governor wearing boots and all those things. For me, I don't see it as seriousness. When you are just approving people to go and dredge and clear drainage in June when rain has started, I don't see it as seriousness. Oh, sanitation, something, I don't see it as seriousness. We need to go back to the drawing board. Invite professionals. Example like that man is over 70 already, experienced. You know, Professor Dakpo Longe, you know, he went to Obafemi Law University. I think he did some research in Unilag, also went abroad. And there are other people doing great research that understand this terrain. From Unilag, everybody down is affected, seriously. And those on the mainland also, because of the construction that have gone on the island, they have now been affected. If you grew up in Ikeja, you will know when rain falls. Water is now as much as this, the level. It is increasing. Climate change is doing its own, so you must perfect your system so that whatever happens. Do you know what Netherlands did? The storm wall that they did has only closed twice, meaning they did a prevention to the extent of 10,000. They put the rate of what could happen to times 10,000, meaning they overestimated what could come. So that bridge, they have done it, I think 1996 or so, and they still keep on updating it, has only closed twice. Only twice. You know? Right. So these are the issues, and we need to wake up on our governance.
All right, Kofo, let me ask you this question, because some experts have blamed the flood in Lagos to urban planning. And I'm just here thinking perhaps, the Lagos state government might be revisiting the Lagos master plan. And if that's the case, some Lagosians might just be losing their properties because we know that some constructions are not in places that they should be. Do you think this is something the government should look at? And also, do you think Lagosians are ready for this sacrifice?
I think, as Ayo said, whether Lagosians are ready for the sacrifice or not is, I guess, debatable. But then we're facing a problem that we cannot pray away. The problem is not going to just magically stop. This is something that we have no control over. So the sacrifice is important to be made if we want to keep Lagos, because if not, we're going to look at a city that will probably cease to exist because we are not actively taking any steps towards ensuring that the people and the livelihood of Lagos is being secured and being saved. So whether I guess Lagosians are ready for the sacrifice or not is a maybe a conversation for another day, but then the sacrifice would have to be made because we're facing a problem that we cannot but make that sacrifice for.
All right, thank you so much, Kufora Odozie, and of course, Ayomide for joining us here in the studio. We're hoping that the government officials are listening, and come this time next year, we will not be having this same conversation about flooding. But thank you so much, Ayo, and Kufu, for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Watch your Breakfast Extra. We're going to quick break. When we return, there's more.
Welcome back. Now, cancer is becoming an increasing health concern in Nigeria, with more families feeling its impact every year. Now, globally, the World Health Organization estimates there are over 20 million new cancer cases annually and nearly 10 million deaths. Now, without stronger efforts in prevention, early detection and treatment, those numbers are expected to rise significantly by 2050.
In Nigeria, many cases are diagnosed late, making treatment more difficult. But of course, experts say many cancers can be prevented, and early detection can greatly improve survival. So, what are the leading causes of cancer in Nigeria, and how can people reduce the risk? Join us for this conversation is a public health physician, Dr. Lois Fashino. Dr. Fashino, thank you so much for joining us on Breakfast Extra. I just want to know, good morning to you. What are the biggest factors driving the rise in cancer cases in Nigeria? Because if you look at the statistics right now, we're talking about 127,000 cases reported annually. Now, this is based on the Federal Ministry of Health.
Yes, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. Globally, annually, we have about 10 million deaths from cancer alone worldwide. That's about 1 in 6 people die from cancer or cancer-related complications in the world every year. And for cancer, we have so many types of cancer. Cancer can occur in any part of the body, in any organ of the body, and it occurs as a result of rapid proliferation of abnormal cells in the body. Now, for the risk factors, we have those that are individual factors. So we'll talk about tobacco. The first common leading cause of cancer in the world right now is tobacco, smoking of tobacco, tobacco use, and also we have alcohol intake. Alcohol also increases the risk of having cancer. And for people that use tobacco and also smoke, in fact, it increases the risk as high as 2 times, 5 times more. Also, we have infections. There are some infections that have been known to cause certain types of cancer. Talk about human papilloma virus infection has been associated with cervical cancer. We also have hepatitis B and hepatitis C infection. They've been known to be associated with liver cancer. We also have H. pylori infection. And it has been shown to be associated with stomach cancer. So we have dietary factors also. You know, some people eat a lot of processed food, processed meat, unhealthy diet, also predisposes people to having cancer. And also family history have been seen to be a strong factor in causing cancer. You know, there are people that have their parents or siblings or aunts or uncle that have died as a result of cancer. So when there's a family member that has died as a result of cancer or its complication, there's a probability that somebody else in the family may have cancer again. Aside all these factors, cancer can also just develop spontaneously regardless of these factors. That because I know people will say, but there are people that smoke cigarettes, there are people that take alcohol, there are people that eat unhealthy diets and they didn't have cancer before they died and all of that. So these are just the modifiable risk factors. We call them modifiable because there is something you can do about it to prevent it occurring as a risk factor for cancer. Whereas there are unmodifiable risk factors, that's genetics. There's nothing you can do about it. So if there's a family history of genetics, you can't erase that. If there are environmental factors that are predisposing people to cancer, you can't erase that. So it's just like saying, oh, we want people to breathe in healthy air. But if the environment doesn't have healthy hair, how will they breathe in healthy hair? So, those are factors that you don't have control over. Thank you very much.
Well, Dr. Fashina, let's come back to the preventable lifestyle changes. Yes, you've mentioned tobacco, you've mentioned alcohol. Now, for people who are, engaging in stuff, alcohol and, tobacco and all that, what other lifestyle changes can they do to prevent, cancer? Are there vaccinations? Should they do regular screening? What should they stop doing?
Yes, of course. According to recent statistics, we have about 38% of cancers that are preventable. We have the human papilloma virus infection. It can be prevented by the HPV vaccine, and it is readily available in the country. It's available in government facilities, in some private facilities. In fact, some organizations go about vaccinating girls for the HPV infection, and it is advised for people that have female children or ladies as early as 9 years old, you can vaccinate a female child for the HPV infection. So vaccines are available between 9 and 14. You can vaccinate. It is safe and it is very effective. Also, we have the hepatitis B virus vaccine. In fact, it has been included in the immunization schedule for children. And so for every child that is born that is taken to an approved facility for vaccination, it's already in the schedule. So they give the child there are about 3 doses for the vaccination. It's also available for adults, and it is available at very, very subsidized rates. So adults can have access. For the HPV is for the HBV, that is hepatitis B virus. Now we have HPV, that is human papilloma virus, that is for cervical cancer. But the HBV, that's for hepatitis. Both males and females can get vaccinated. I am vaccinated. Adults can have 3 doses. And children also have 3 doses, and it covers for a period of 10 years. So it means that once the 10 years has elapsed, such individual is expected to go back for another vaccination. And so these are the vaccines that are available to prevent liver cancer and also cervical cancer.
Dr. Fashina, we've talked about early detection, but can we also talk about diagnostic centers in Nigeria? Right now, we have about 6 of them. There are talks about expanding it to 10. But then, with having 6 at this point, that's what we can hold on to at the moment. How sustainable is that, and how many oncology centers should we have to say that, okay, we have a good number to cater to the number of cancer patients in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. I would say that the cancer centers that are available are grossly inadequate to cater to the population. And right now, we know that the healthcare system is facing a lot of problems in terms of infrastructure, low human resources. There's a lot of outflow of healthcare professionals outside the country. And so this has been one of the major issues in public health for people that have cancer. And so when people come down with cancer, number one, they are diagnosed late because the number of centers that are available are very few. And so for those that present to these centers, before they are attended to, sometimes the disease would have progressed rapidly and, complications are already setting in. So to cater to the population we need over 100 facilities, because we're talking about those that will attend to those in the low income settings, in the rural areas, in the urban areas, village settings, underserved population. So we need to have facilities that can cover every area and every sector of the country. And this is generally, that are associated with severe health outcomes. They are common in low income settings because there's reduced accessibility, there's reduced affordability, and for those that seek healthcare, they are not able to afford the money to pay. You understand? So we need so many centers, and not just the centers, we need seasoned oncologists that can help to reduce the burden of cancer in the country.
Well, doctor, talking about, that ratio, you said we need about 100 and then we have 6. Would you say that one of the reasons, or what will be the reason that, we don't have a lot of, these facilities to handle these cases? Is it that we're thinking that cancer is not as rampant, or a lot of people are doing it hush-hush and, terrified as to, I'm just going to pray it away?
I understand. I believe that it's not just about having the cancer centers. I believe that if some of the already existing centers, talk about the primary healthcare system, the secondary healthcare system, the tertiary healthcare system, if they are properly equipped, we may not really need to have special oncology centers. But the problem is that some of these centers, starting with the primary healthcare centers are those that are closer to those in the communities. They should be the first point of call for any individual. So we're saying that somebody is sick now, it doesn't need to go to a government facility first. Its first point of contact with any healthcare system should be the primary healthcare system. So if the primary healthcare centers, we have so many of them across the country, but they are not properly equipped. And so these facilities are not utilized properly. They lack adequate human resources, they lack infrastructure, they lack equipment, they lack so many things, or they are inadequate. Let me say they are inadequate. They don't lack, but they are grossly inadequate. And so they are not even able to cater to minor illnesses, not to talk of cases like cancer, surgeries, and so many other advanced cases. So I believe that if the government can work on all these centers across board, the primary healthcare centers, the secondary healthcare centers, and the government facilities, they will be able to reach the entire population quickly.
Dr. Fashina, can you tell us if there's a cure for cancer and how affordable it is in Nigeria at this moment?
Okay. I would say that for cancer, like I said earlier, there are different types of cancer, and cancer can occur in any part of the body. And so the cure or the treatment is dependent on the type of cancer, the stage of the cancer, and the part of the body that is affected, and the rate of metastasis. Metastasis is the rate of spread. And so we have different treatment options. We have the surgical option, we have chemotherapy, radiotherapy, immunotherapy, and sometimes they combine these therapies together. And they are very effective. But the issue is that for many cases, they are not detected early. That's because people don't present to healthcare facilities early enough. And for some cancers, they have a very, very rapid proliferation rate, and they increase and they spread faster than others. And so there's no way to ascertain how fast a particular cancer will spread in the body. And that is why we're emphasizing on screening processes and early detection, because once it's detected early, the treatment plan can start as quickly as possible, and then the rate of spread is reduced. There are people that have been healed from cancer. There are people that have attained remission from cancer. So it's possible to achieve cure, but it all depends on how early it's detected and how early the treatment is commenced, and how accessible the care is. For people that are able to access the care easily, they get their treatment. Some people go into remission, and it all depends. Some people have their treatment for some months, some people have their treatment for some years. And so yes, that's about that.
So I also added to my question, I said how affordable it is, because you mentioned radiotherapy, you mentioned chemotherapy. How affordable are these processes?
The care for cancer can be financially draining for the average Nigerian, even for the rich. In medicine, we say that a single healthcare condition can take somebody from 100 to 0. So for us, we don't really have universal health coverage. We don't have insurances that help Nigerians to, deal with illnesses such as cancer. Cancer takes a lot of money. These therapies that I mentioned, they take a lot of money, and some of them are as frequent as monthly chemotherapy sessions. So for a Nigerian that doesn't have health insurance, or that doesn't have financial help from family members, or people that can help, it is financially draining. And for many people, they are not able to. Many people start the care, but so many people are not able to sustain the care, and it is an ongoing care. It is not just a one-time treatment, and for many Nigerians, it is not affordable. It is not affordable for many Nigerians. It's not affordable.
Well, Doctor, talking about affordability, now for those who are in areas where they're not able to do, regular checkups to check, if they're okay or not, what symptoms should they be looking at that will raise alarm for them? And then for people who are managing cancer, what would be your advice in terms of their lifestyle? Are there foods they're supposed to be taking? Should they continue to take the agbo or, teas? Are there supplements they should be leaning towards just to aid, their health? So that's two questions in one.
Okay, please, can you go over the question one more time?
The first one, for people who are not, that don't have access to regular checkup, what should they look out for? What symptoms should they look out for to say, okay, something is wrong, I need to find a care center to do a checkup?
Okay, so for cancer, like I said, there are different types of cancer that occur in different parts of the body. For some of them, they don't present with symptoms until later stages. And so we can't determine the extent of metastasis, the extent to which some of these symptoms appear. But there are some of them that they do present with symptoms, rather. They do present with symptoms. So we talk about an abnormal swelling in the body, and one of the commonest symptoms is unexplained weight loss. So for someone that is not trying to lose weight, and the person suddenly starts losing weight, and people are saying, why are you looking so lean? Are you sick? Even if there is no other symptom, but the person is just losing weight, that can be an indication that there is a cancer somewhere. So abnormal swelling, abnormal discharges, unexplained weight loss, pain in any area of the body, persistent pain in any area of the body, and changes in bowel habits, changes in bladder habits. Some people lose control of certain parts of their body. The most important thing is that for any symptom, now, for all these symptoms, they may or may not mean that the person has cancer. I need to say that. It may or may not mean that the person has cancer. But what this means is that we should be very sensitive to changes in our body. Any change, anything abnormal that anybody sees or notices should make the person present to any healthcare facility. In our country, people treat themselves using over-the-counter medications a lot. People no longer present to the healthcare facilities because they believe that healthcare is expensive. Some people do not want to wait for long in the hospital before they are seen by a doctor. And this has caused more harm than good in Nigeria. And so somebody notices something abnormal, instead of the person presenting to the healthcare facility, the person goes to a chemist, goes to a pharmacy, uses herbal mixture, herbal medication. Somebody tells the person, oh, it's not a big deal, just use this. It's not a big deal, just use that. And so by the time the person comes down with more serious symptoms, the disease has progressed already. And once it has progressed and metastasized to different parts of the body, there's little or nothing that can be done for the person. And so we have that culture in the country. And I believe that emphasis on health education, increased awareness, advocacy, especially in the rural population, it will do a lot for us. It will do a lot more for us. And for people that already have cancer or are already treating cancer, it is advised that they have regular visits to their oncologist or their physicians, because these are the people that know about the disease. When your car has a problem, you do not take it to an hairdresser, you do not take it to a tailor, you take it to a mechanic. And so when people are ill, they easily go to their friends, go to other people and ask them, what should I use? What should I do? And so for people that are treating this illness, it's important that they have regular checkups with their physicians. These are the people that will tell you, these are the things you need to do. These are the meals you need to take. These are the meals you need to avoid. And of course, like I mentioned, we already know that one of the commonest risk factors for cancer is tobacco use, smoking, alcohol. And so for someone that already has cancer, it's like sentencing him or herself to life sentence by engaging in such risky behaviors. Yeah. And so we call them risky social behaviors. We also have the risky sexual behaviors also. And so it's important to avoid all these, maintain a healthy diet. And I'm talking about healthy diet, one of the meals that have been implicated, or one of the meals that studies have now shown to cause cancer is processed meat. An example is the sausage, the hot dog, the ham that people eat. And so people are advised now to, as much as possible, eat fresh protein, freshly processed protein, and try to reduce processed meat, processed food, canned foods as much as possible, because they are not healthy. Some of them are processed with chemicals that are injurious to our health. And so we are advised to consume fresh food, fresh products. You understand?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Louise Fashinwa, thank you so much for such an amazing, conversation. It was quite very impactful. We appreciate you joining us on Breakfast Extra and having this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Now let's go on a short break. When we return, Breakfast Extra continues with another story. Stay with us.
Well, thanks for joining us to Breakfast Extra. Now, when we talk about the challenges facing Nigeria's healthcare system, the conversation often focuses on hospitals, equipment, funding, access to medical care. But behind every patient treated and every life saved are healthcare workers. I'm talking doctors, nurses, midwives, and other professionals who keep the system running. However, what happens when those responsible for caring for others are themselves struggling to survive? Now, a Nigerian Navy doctor, I'm talking about Dr. Innocent, has raised concerns after sharing his experience of working for nearly 300 days without receiving his salary. His story has sparked fresh conversations about the welfare and working conditions of healthcare workers in Nigeria.
And this comes amid concerns following the death of a 25-year-old Corps member doctor who reportedly passed away after his request for sick leave was denied for weeks. These incidents have raised questions about the support system available for those on the front line of healthcare delivery. Now today on Breakfast Extra, we ask, who cares for the caregivers? What does the experience of Nigerian doctors and other health workers say about the state of our healthcare system? Are poor working conditions contributing to burnout, frustration, and increasing migration of medical professionals abroad? Now, to discuss this, we're joined by Dr. Innocent, who's a doctor at the Nigerian Navy Reference Hospital, and Dr. Alamin, an advocate for Nigerian doctors and healthcare workers. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Awesome. And I think, Dr. Innocent, let's start with you, of course. Your video has sparked this conversation again. Just give us detail of your experience. You're in Cross River State, and you've talked about working for almost 300 days without receiving your salary. Can you take us through that period, what it's been like for you and everything?
Okay. Good morning, News Central. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really, really grateful. And it's a privilege to share my experience and my story. Well, today is day 300, by the way. Today makes it day 300. Oh. And, what sparked the video was I was going to work for a long period of time without pay. And I work at Navy Hospital here in Calabar. We are being paid by the Ministry of Defense, by the way, but there was, we are not getting any feedback, any positive feedback as to when the pay was going to come or what was delaying it. And even the few times we made contact, they mentioned budget allocation, but it just didn't really make sense. So that video was a way of airing frustration. However, I must say the hospital I worked in their own efforts, did a bit to relieve the situation by, giving us what our palliative, right, in their own capacity. So now we know what about persons who are affected in total who had not been paid as of 290 days when I made that video. 8 persons have not been paid at all from the Ministry of Defense. So that was what led to that. However, after that video, just about 24 hours after that video, payment was made for about 2 months, about a month and 3 weeks, let me put it that way. That's for those who had not been paid at all. And then for the other house officers, some of them, in fact, all of them, both the house officers, the doctors, the nurses, all the interns got paid within about 24 hours of making that video. And I think it's worthy to note that this is not just Nigerian Navy hospital issues. It's Ministry of Defense hospitals. All hospitals where the Ministry of Defense pay interns have this issue, because we actually do communicate, and you discover that all centers that at least I got in touch with, they had this issue. The Ministry of Defense had not made the payment. So it was a matter of how then do we air our agreements and how do we let them know. I mean, we are taking it up with the hospital authorities, and they have done their best in their own way to make the payment work. I really do commend, I think the hospital I work in, I really do commend their efforts. But like I said, it's the Ministry of Defense is way, way higher up there. It's beyond what the hospital could do. And so just, make the video out of frustration.
Yeah, so Innocent, I think I wanted to just ask, you had mentioned that efforts to reach out to them were made. Can you tell us when, within the 290 days, when were those efforts made, and when they gave you the feedback as to they're waiting for budget, did they say when they were going to answer before, them paying now after your video came out?
Well, the efforts that were made to reach out to the Ministry of Defense, we made some phone calls to some persons at the Ministry of Defense. I mean, I actually even made 2 phone calls to someone who works at the Ministry of Defense, and he told me about the budget allocation issue, and it's beyond me. And then we had 2 persons actually go to Abuja, right? These 2 persons at that time, this was around March, I believe. Around March. At that time, they had not been paid for about 6-7 months because they started internship before me. So they went to Abuja to settle this, but there's nothing substantial came up.
Let me come to you now, Dr. Alamin. From your engagement with doctors across Nigeria, how common are issues like, of course, delayed salaries, like what Dr. Innocent has been going through for 300 days, burnout, and, of course, poor welfare among healthcare workers? How common are these among Nigerian doctors and healthcare providers?
All right. Thank you so much for having me, and good morning, everyone. I think it is very important that we are having this conversation again. When I saw the topic of this conversation, doctors under pressure, I couldn't find a better way to put it. Our doctors in Nigeria right now, as they have always been, they've always been under pressure. And I think it is important. This is a very good forum to put these debates of our political leaders. I think this is a very good avenue. There is this rising trend very recently by our political leaders and the people in government to say that, our doctors and our healthcare providers in general are not patriotic. with the rising trend in doctors leaving the country or other healthcare providers also leaving the country. But when you look at this very troubling series of events that have occurred in the past few weeks in Nigeria, with the doctors especially, you would see reason why these doctors actually leave the country. And when you have these political leaders come out to say that these doctors are unpatriotic, you will find that these doctors are not just unpatriotic, they are not unpatriotic. They are fighting for their survival. They are put in a place where they have to choose between their survival and their patriotism. And of course, they'll have to choose their survival. One instance is the one we're talking about today. A doctor in a military hospital has not been paid for over 300 days. Today is the 300th day. You can imagine how he had survived all these days. Now, I'm not here to explain to you the works of the working conditions of doctors. We are Nigerians. We all know. You go to hospitals, you meet a frustrated doctor, but you don't understand what brings about that frustration. Or you meet a nurse who treats you badly, but you don't understand what goes behind their actions. Nothing of of frustration should justify how they treat you, but that is a conversation for another day. Now, what I am here to tell us is the fact that these doctors go through these things, and it is just deeply troubling. Another instance is another doctor in this same week in Kaduna State who set out to do a humanitarian work. Gather people around, women who need to know about their menstrual hygiene, to distribute sanitary pads. This is something that the government should be doing. An individual decided to do it. What's next happened to him is he found himself behind bars. When they tell you this kind of stories, you just find it so weird, so wild to comprehend that a doctor who went out to do a humanitarian job found himself behind bars. We had to call on to the government before he was released. In another instance, we have Dr. Wisdom, whose sick leave was denied for whole 3 weeks. And now his family, who have spent a lot, everything that they have to bring him up, and give him this opportunity to study medicine. And, in Nigeria, we have this where when one person becomes a doctor, he's seen as probably the lifesaver for the whole family, because everybody thinks he's going to earn and help the family out of poverty and all of that. Now that doctor has lost his life, and it has become a disadvantage for the whole family just because someone somewhere in that place decided not to give him his sick leave that he rightfully deserves. In another place, you have doctors who, now we are talking about, this is a country where we have half of the doctors that we produce every year with the intention to leave the country. We produce about 1,000 to 2,500 doctors every year from our medical universities that we have. Almost half of them leave the country every single year. Now we have 238 of the doctors that have trained outside of Nigeria come back home and say, we want to practice in Nigeria. 238 of them, after passing their exams, spending a lot of money on the process to pass that exam, now they were sent a 265,000 naira fee to pay for their induction, which will allow them to gain a license to practice. Just 2 days after that, another notice came. No explanation. We have just increased the amount to 415,000 naira. Now, this is the same country that we have political leaders that are telling us that those that stayed in the country are better than those that have left. If a country cherishes, if a country is talking about, boasting about those that have stayed, that are doing better, we should be, that country should be seen taking care of those that have actually stayed back or those that have returned. Instead of that country to be seen doing that, they are causing unnecessary hardship, even for them to get their license to practice in the same country that we have depleting number of doctors. So when they tell you about these things, it's deeply, it is deeply troubling, and you just find it very weird to understand where these policymakers or where their interest lies. And very troubling because, permit me to say this, that when the spokesperson to the president, Mr. Bala, recently made a a media, outing, and he said some horrible things. And one of the things he said was that, those people that stayed back in Nigeria earning 60,000 naira are better than those who have left earning 4.4 million naira in equivalent. That is 2,400 pounds. 2,400 pounds. And in his defense, he made mention that the government of Nigeria is doing so much, to the healthcare providers and the healthcare system in general. He made mention that now they are providing free cesarean sections. Doesn't that sound very nice, that the government is providing free cesarean sections? But sometimes when you look at these solutions, you will find it's in total opposite of what our the two challenges that our healthcare system is going through. And when you find someone like Mr. Bala, who is the special advisor on policy communication to the president, making these assertions, you find it very troubling. All of other policies that go through. He is still the same person with the responsibility to dissect these policies and explain it to the public, making these kind of assertions. In Nigeria, we have the highest cause of maternal mortality. I mean, we are the biggest global. We have the biggest global burden of maternal mortality, which is about 20% around the world. In this highest percent, 1 in 22 women in Nigeria are facing lifetime risk of death during pregnancy or childbirth. 1 in 22. That means in every 22 women who should give birth now, one of them have a risk of losing her life.
Well, Dr. Alimi, you've literally, said literally most of the concerning issues that we've seen online in terms of, the life of our doctors. And of course, we're losing a lot of doctors. You said it yourself. If you're comparing the 60,000 naira to the 2,400 or 2,200 pounds, there is nobody that want to sit down and collect 60,000. And having a communication from, the government saying that there's free cesarean section, that's for the citizens. Don't you need doctors to do the operation? My question now is, where are we headed in terms of Nigeria? It looks like we're taking it like a joke. Oh, doctors are jackbarring, they're going. What percentage do you think we'll have left if this is not dealt with and dealt with real quick?
Thank you for that question. Recently, the federal government came out crying as well, the Minister of Health, saying that the country is left with only 50,000 doctors. And they came out crying like they didn't know that this was going to happen. When you have series of events that continue to happen and showing you that, you are at the verge of losing all of your doctors and you do nothing about it, then when those things start to happen, then you come out to cry as if it just suddenly happened. It is an absolute disgrace. It is an absolute disgrace. And I think the point that I was trying to make earlier is very important, and that is very important to this question that you have mentioned as well. The policies that we keep on chunking out does not, reflect the challenges that we go through. You would wonder who advises the government that free cesarean section should be a solution to maternal mortality. Should be a solution to maternal mortality. When in reality, we have 30,000 primary healthcare centers. We have only 774 local government. Everyone in Nigeria, over 220 million, they are closer to their primary healthcare centers than their teaching hospitals, than their specialist hospitals. But these primary healthcare centers, only 20% of the 30,000 primary healthcare centers that we have in Nigeria are fully functional. Only 20% of them are fully functional. That means there is no running water, there is no electricity, there are no basic medical supplies, there is no manpower in that hospital. That means it's not about fees, it's not about the inability of cesarean section, it's the fact that there is no manpower and there is no resources to do that cesarean section in that hospital. There is no awareness, community awareness about the commonest cause of of maternal mortality in those communities. The people don't even know what they should do to prevent this. The first common the cause of maternal mortality is postpartum hemorrhage. You know what that is? That is just bleeding after a woman gives birth. Just bleeding after a woman gives birth. And do you tell me, is cesarean section going to take care of postpartum hemorrhage? No, a simple knowledge passed on to the people who are there during the giving birth process would suffice. This is a country that 55,000 of the people in that country, give birth in places outside of hospitals, and then we have no skilled birth attendants. Less than half, of births are not attended by skilled birth attendants. So when you look at these things, you find that the solutions that we have for our problems are entirely opposite of the challenges that we have. And that is why every single day we'll just continue to talk about these things without tangible solutions to it. We keep losing doctors, and yet we keep shaming them, we keep blaming them for leaving, while the root causes of the why they leave are not being challenged, are not being taken care of. Every single day, doctors stay in the doctors that are supposed to be in their clinics, saving lives and making research about diseases that we have in our country, are either found on the streets fighting for their survival or in prisons just because someone somewhere decided just to arrest them and put them there.
All right, Dr. Alamin, I can tell from the way you're talking about the situation that you're quite passionate about this, and of course we should be, because when it comes to our health system, it's not something we should take lightly. Well, let me come back to you now, Dr. Innocent. I don't hope for it, and I'm really praying that perhaps after this interview, the government will do the needful and the payments will be made. But if for some reason there's still a delay in your salary, what would be your next move?
All right, thank you once again. Already, we have had meetings with the Nigerian Medical Association, Cross River State branch, and the National Association of Resident Doctors, the president of NAD, and we are hoping that something is done. However, if nothing is done, the real issue is Nigeria. We live in a society that does not prioritize healthcare, does not prioritize the worker. If I hadn't gone 9 months into a 1-year program, I probably would have just, resigned, quit immediately. But right now, you look at the sacrifices and how far you've come. It's 1-year program. I'm actually like 10 months in a few days into the program. You just want to finish, right? So I'm just speaking based on, what I'm seeing at the moment. I'm hopeful that something is going to be done. I'm very hopeful. Following the meetings we've had, including with the hospital and the associations I mentioned, I'm hopeful. But should it not be done, I don't know. We'll probably just have to finish the program and hope. Again, it's Nigeria. There is nobody holding those on the top accountable, and that's a very terrible thing. But on the 12th and on the 13th of July, we had the Navy and the Ministry of Defense release their own press statement on Punch. And the Navy, in their own statement, said they will pay the doctors within 2 weeks. This on Punch newspaper, July 12th. And it was funny when I saw this. I was really angry when I saw it because they said they promised to pay the doctors within 2 weeks. It's funny because we were not promised anything. Nobody reached out to us and said we're going to pay you in 2 weeks. So this is what they're telling the media. And this is the reality on ground. We do not know of any promise. We do not know of any promise. Right now, in our own capacity, except with the help of our associations, that's the NAD and the NMA, there is little to nothing we can actually do. So just the situation on ground.
Well, Dr. Alamin, of course, we've had these conversations over and over again. And Innocent has just pointed out how, you're seeing responses on a newspaper, but you did not get the response physically after, reaching out for payment of over 300 days. And I can only imagine how he had survived. And thanks to the hospital, like you mentioned, to, help them pending when the payment come. Now, Dr. Alamin, I know that you say we've talked about reforms. We've talked about what is needed for the doctors, the caregivers who's taking care of us, and then we're losing so much. Please, again, what immediate reforms can we do that is needed to ensure that our doctors, people like Dr. Innocent, the nurses, the healthcare workers are properly supported while serving, while still having hope for Nigerians?
Thank you. I think at this point, it is good to commend, the Minister of Health when he took on the mantle of power as the Minister of Health. There was a beautiful document that a policy on the workforce migration, the curbing the workforce migration and retention of medical doctors or healthcare providers in general. And that was a beautiful document that outlined several things, several measures that would tackle and improve the welfare, mainly the welfare of the healthcare providers. But till date, the implementation of that document has been stagnant. And I would say that has been the problem with Nigeria, implementation. We always leave everything on document. Unless things like this come out to the public, someone somewhere would not do what he is supposed to do to pass this, policies forward and make sure that they are put into action. And so this is just a call to the government that no one who would leave his country, Nigeria, just wants to leave the country. Everyone wants to see, we all want to see our country progress, and the only way we can do that if we have the honest political will to do that, if we're seeing government actually do it. We have several Nigerian doctors who have left the country but have come back to set up institutions that are doing very well for our own Nigeria. Dr. Oni, orthopedics doctor, is an example. He left the United States and is back in Nigeria doing amazing. So many doctors as well. We should be seen, working on this policy. So for this, of course, this policy, I feel like it is important that we go back to it. Minister of Health, you've done amazing when you came on. Please continue that. Just move on with this action. This document, make sure that it is implemented word by word. And that would translate to a better health outcome for our people as well. That is one. The second thing I would like to say is we should move on, from blaming, this blaming culture that we have. We should work on what we should work on, our challenges, and find lasting solutions, sustainable solutions to them. The world recently, this week actually, the world has, so many countries have advanced, in the cure of sickle cell disease. Sickle cell disease, I've watched the last session here in the Breakfast Extras talking about cancer as one of the causes, genetics as one of the causes that there is nothing you can do about it. But so many countries have advanced now, even genetic causes are being taken care of. Nigeria, having the highest number of sickle cell disease in the whole planet, with over 130,000 sickle cell disease babies born every year. You would think we should be in forefront of these advancements, but we are not. So we should have these kind of conversations to ensure that we have lasting solutions, not just blame game and all of that. Please.
No.
Honestly,
you so much.
Yeah, the quality of any healthcare system depends not only on its hospitals, but also on the equipment, but also, of course, the people who deliver the care, also people that we should focus on. And as Nigeria continues to seek solutions for its healthcare challenges, the welfare of the caregivers remains a critical part of that conversation. Dr. Innocent Chigozie and, of course, Dr. Alamin Usman, thank you so much for joining us on Breakfast Extra.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're on a short break. We'll return, wrap things up on the show. But before that, we're going to have a very, very interesting conversation. Stay with us. Well, thanks for staying with us. Now, for many young Africans, the dream of a better life abroad can be so powerful that it pushes them to take, dangerous and often, irregular migration routes across deserts, detention camps, and even open seas. Now, every year, thousands risk everything in search of opportunities. But, behind the headlines and viral videos are stories of survival, of loss, trauma, and difficult choices.
Today, we're not here to sensationalize those experiences. Instead, we want to have an honest conversation about the realities of irregular migration, the dangers involved, and the importance of informed and safe migration pathways. Now, we would have been joined by Emmanuel George Idoku, who's a Nigerian barber, and he survived the Sahara Desert crossing Libya and the Mediterranean Sea. And of course, we have presently Katongo Chibalani, who's a protection officer, International Organization for Migration. And she'll be helping us understand the broader migration picture and the support available to migrants. Good morning, Chi. Thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we don't have Judge here to give us his own side of, his experiences having to go through this journey. But Katango, for many young Africans that see migration success stories online, the Japa syndrome, from your perspective, from your agency perspective, how much of the reality is often missing from those narratives?
Good morning. I'm happy to be here. And thank you so much for your question. From IAM's perspective, so I'll speak about this from IAM's perspective. So when you look at what is presented or highlighted mostly on social media when it comes to migration, it is the outcome of migration rather than the journey itself. Like you rightly said, most of these migrants experience abuse, exploitation, their challenges, risks, and then sacrifices that they go through, but which are mostly not highlighted when you look at social media highlights. So let me respond by giving you an example. Imagine yourself, like watching wedding pictures, right? Wedding pictures, graduation pictures. Most oftentimes, when you look at these pictures, you don't look at the sacrifices that have been put in. You don't look at the risks. You don't look at the challenges that have been put across. That is exactly how some of these migration journeys are. Most of these migrants sacrifice a lot. They risk so much for them to reach their final destinations, but most of these highlights are not highlighted in social medias. I'm not saying some people don't succeed, but while others succeed abroad, many others face, face exploitation, debt, and then homelessness, and also detention, and also others face, prolonged periods without work. So another example I could give you is that as IOM, we have assisted Nigerians who sold family assets or borrowed large sums of money to finance their irregular journeys, only to become stranded in, transit countries without any source of income, legal documentation, or access to basic services. So these stories are rarely shared online. What we just see is the outcome of the migration journey. So from IAM's point of view, what I would emphasize is that it is very important for young people who seek to migrate to have a balance when it comes to accurate information and understanding both the opportunities and also the risks associated with migration. And lastly, I think one thing that we should understand is that migration itself is not the problem when it is safe, orderly, and regular, and based on information and decisions. It can, when you look at migration, it can also bring tremendous benefits to migrants, not only migrants, but also their families, and also the countries, and also the countries where they're coming from, and also the destination countries where they are. But the challenge arises when these people rely on misinformation and also more or less unrealistic expectations or smugglers who deliberately misrepresent the risk and promise opportunities that are often not in existence. Thank you so much.
All right, Chibalani, I'd like to know, what are the most common dangers migrants face on irregular routes through the Sahara, through Libya, and the Mediterranean?
So much for that question. It's a very interesting question. When you look at, those routes, like the routes you've mentioned, Sahara, Libya, and Mediterranean, I must mention that those are some of the most dangerous routes. So just imagine yourself. Firstly, imagine yourself crossing the desert, you have a broken down vehicle, which means that you'll be left without food, without water, without medical assistance, right? And then if you look at the Sahara, temperatures are extremely, extremely high. So that means it will leave you in a very vulnerable situation. So most of these migrants are faced with these challenges where they may be abandoned by smugglers, or maybe they have a broken down vehicle. And what normally happens is that when they're in this situation, they end up, finding themselves, falling into trafficking networks or falling into the hands of other smugglers who exploit them. So their vulnerability actually increases where they become victims of trafficking and others are detained. Like, for example, if you look at situations of our migrants who are returning from Libya, most often these migrants are put in detention facilities. And because these migrants are moving in an irregular manner without proper documentation, they are forced into, forced labor. There's violence, and then there's a lot of serious, human rights abuses along these routes. And then moving on, if you look at also along the Central Mediterranean route, where like it's overcrowded, and also, where they're moving in boats which are really unsafe, which significantly
Right.
increases the risk of shipwrecks and also loss of life. Right. So, but then again, if you look at IOM's program, our mandate
Katongo, I apologize for interjecting. Let's quickly go on a short break. When we return, you'll continue that conversation, and also I also want to ask you about how the IOM assists the migrants. Let's go on the short break. When we return, the conversation continues. Welcome back. Now, before the break, we're talking about irregular migration. And of course, our guest is Katongo Chibalani, who is a protection officer, International Organization for Migration, IOM. Now, before the break, she was telling us about, the common dangers migrants face on irregular routes. And I just wanted to ask her, to tell us the IOM work with governments and partners, what they do to assist migrants who become stranded or vulnerable during these journeys. Katongo, please.
Thank you so much. So firstly, maybe let me just give a brief bit of a background on IOM's work when it comes to assistance to migrants in vulnerable situations. So IOM has been providing assistance to migrants in vulnerable situations from 2017 to date in Nigeria. And we have assisted over 68,000 Nigerians to return back to Nigeria in a safe and dignified manner. So when it comes to the work that we do with the government, what I can say is that when you look at the work that we do as IOM, we are supporting government efforts in management of migration in the country. So our work is not isolated. We work with various government and non-governmental organizations, including UN entities, when it comes to providing support to migrants in vulnerable situations. As you may be aware, different government institutions have different mandates when it comes to provision of services for migrants in vulnerable situations. We do have institutions that are providing shelter to migrants who need temporary shelter. We do have institutions that are providing medical support. We do have institutions that are providing psychosocial support and other protection services to migrants in vulnerable situations. So, and in addition to that, IOM is also working with the government of Nigeria in developing what we call a national reform mechanism for migrants in vulnerable situations. Also recognizing that Nigeria has presently a national reform mechanism for victims of trafficking. But beyond that, we're developing what we call national reform mechanism for migrants in vulnerable situations, which is a framework that is aimed at enhancing coordination amongst different service providers who are providing varying services. Beyond just enhancing the coordination, we're also looking at how these different institutions understand their different roles and responsibilities when it comes to assistance to migrants in vulnerable situations. And then when you look at the varying support that is provided, aside from the ones that I provided, is also some of the services that are provided under what we call our assisted voluntary return and reintegration program. So this program is one of our flagship programs that supports stranded migrants who wish to return home safely and also voluntarily. So this program ensures that migrants who are voluntarily trying to get back home, who are not in a position to assist themselves return back home, are assisted to return home. And upon return, they receive what we call reintegration assistance, which is tailored to their need and also tailored to their need and also tailored to the context where they are going back. Thank you so much.
All right, now, Chibilani, what alternatives exist for young Nigerians who genuinely, want to, migrate through the right, the right way, basically? And of course, who are looking for opportunities abroad, but may not know the safe and legal pathways available?
Well, for me, I think this is really an interesting question, right? Because wanting to travel or build a future abroad is completely understandable. And there is nothing wrong with that aspiration, right? That is the first thing. But the important question is that how do you get there, right? How do you get there? So what I can say when it comes to alternative is that there are legal pathways through which young Nigerians seeking opportunities abroad can explore. Which includes, scholarships, international scholarships that are available for young persons that are intending to migrate. And then there's also legal labor migration programs where there are bilateral agreements that exist between different countries. And then we can also look at possibilities of professional recruitment through licensed and regulated employers as well as one of the alternatives. And then also family reunification as well is also one of the alternatives that can be explored by young persons. And at the same time, I think it's very, very important for young person to recognize that migration should be a choice rather than a necessity. So in short, investing in skills, development, entrepreneurship, and also local economic opportunities can also open, viable pathways for young persons to achieve their aspirations. Thank you.
Well, Kitongo, before we go, what role do you think schools, communities, media organizations, families, friends, what role do you think they should play in educating the young people around them, about the risk of irregular migration and, teaching them to follow the right path?
Okay, when it comes to promoting safe migration, it is a shared responsibility. I think that is one thing that I can say that extends beyond just government alone. Because when you look at it, it's perceived that it is the role of government, but it goes beyond government. It's families, schools, communities, and also, most importantly, the media. I think is very important when it comes to, playing a role, right? So schools, for example, can integrate migration awareness, life skills, and also career guidance and more of educational programs to help the young people make informed decisions. Families and also communities can also, encourage open discussions and also, about migration aspirations, and then also challenges and also the misinformation that is out there when it comes to migration, right? And then also this would definitely support young persons in exploring more of realistic opportunities for them to make informed decisions. And lastly, I think the media. For me, I think the media has particularly a very, very, very important role to play. Balanced reporting, which should highlight both, the opportunities associated with irregular migration first, right?
Yes.
And then the risks linked to irregular migration as well. I think having that balance in reporting actually will really help in sharing more of the lived experiences for migrants that have lived the experiences, and then survivors of trafficking and migrants who've face more of exploitation and abuse.
All right, so thank you so much, Chibalani Katongo, for of course, shedding more light on illegal migration. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
Now, today's conversation, of course, reminds us that migration itself is not the problem. The challenge is when people are forced into dangerous and irregular routes that puts them in their lives at risk. We just hope that this conversation encourages more informed decisions, greater awareness, and stronger support for safe and legal migration pathways. Still watching on Breakfast Extra. We're going to quick break. When we return, Focus Africa comes up next.
Now, every year on July 18, the world celebrates Nelson Mandela International Day, a day set aside by the United Nations to honor the life and legacy of South Africa's first democratically elected president and one of Africa's greatest symbols of peace, justice, and reconciliation. Now, beyond remembering his remarkable journey, the day encourages people to dedicate time to acts of service and reflect on the values of leadership, equality, and human dignity that Mandela stood for throughout his life.
More than a decade after his passing, Nelson Mandela's influence continues to shape conversations on democracy, good governance, social justice, and nation building, not only in South Africa, but across the African continent and the world. As Africa continues to navigate political, economic, and security challenges, many believe Mandela's principles remain as relevant today as ever. And so joining us this morning is Abdullah Vauda, who's a regional investigations and analysis at Africa Risk Control. Thank you, Abdullah, for joining us on Breakfast Extra.
Good morning.
Good morning, both, and thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for
coming. Let me open with a message from our CEO in Addis Ababa, the CEO of Africa Risk Control, Mr. Andwale Msise, who says, Nelson Mandela is far from just a freedom fighter. He's always remembered as a symbol of humanity, dignity, peaceful coexistence, and cooperation. On that note, Nelson Mandela spoke extensively and passionately about his vision for Africa. He's reached out to the continent, and his words resonate globally. His vision and passion for Africa are focused on its liberation, which he led for South Africa, also on unity, peace, and the potential of all African people. His most prominent quote on the continent highlights this aspiration, where Nelson Mandela said, "I dream of an Africa which is in peace with itself." And nothing more could be further from the truth today. On the spirit and struggle of Africa, he says the people of Africa have learned lessons of patience and endurance in their long, long struggle for freedom. And he uses the words Africa, not South Africa. So his vision was broad. On liberation and welfare and service, he says he has dedicated his life to the struggle of the African people. And on identity, most important, the color of my skin is beautiful, like the soil of Mother Africa. And so Mandela viewed Africa not just through the lens of historical oppression, but a place of immense resilience and ultimate victory. Moving on, Mandela Day is celebrated every year on 18 July, where South Africans roll up their sleeves and partake in 67 minutes of activity, where proceeds from the day go to underprivileged children and organizations. Schools are painted, soup kitchens are supported, blankets distributed, and communities come together. And these acts of kindness are very important.
Right. Well, Abdullah, thank you so much for the message from your CEO, I believe. You've mentioned the very word you mentioned from Mandela when he said Africa and not South Africa, because he was talking about reconciliation. So Mandela championed reconciliation over revenge and trying to bring, Africa together in terms of how we all fought for apartheid and all that. Now, how relevant is that approach to the conflict and division Africa faces today, especially, now we're having the xenophobic issue?
Certainly, Nelson Mandela would not be happy if he were alive today to see all the hard work and his vision being discarded. And so at the moment we see disunity in Africa. And I think on leadership, this is where many African leaders are falling short. He's quoted to have said that it's better to lead from behind and to put others in front. And this is not what we are seeing in South Africa, in SADC countries, in many African countries. And the turmoil, we see war in DRC, we see failed states in Zimbabwe, Mozambique, we see Afrophobia attacks on fellow Africans in South Africa. And obviously, this is not what he had put forward. And Mandela also viewed courage, not as the absence of fear, but triumph. And I think we've lost that spirit of Mandela. 30 years, it's exactly 30 years since 1994, and when Mandela led South Africa through its victory over apartheid.
Now, when we look at, of course, present-day Africa, beyond government, you know, what can young Africans draw? What kind of inspiration can young Africans draw from the life of Mandela?
So Mandela, his words and his focus was on children and youth, no doubt. And if they see Mandela as an icon, so more than just you know, a past president, and I think that's a difference, that they should look for similar icons in their own communities, in their own countries. So there's a Mandela everywhere. And I think the spirit of Mandela, it's important that schools and youth do partake in activities on this day in South Africa. And in other countries, I'm not too sure, but if it's meant to be a good international day, we should be seeing more and more such activities in other African countries. And the youth, who are the future leaders of this country, need to know the history and life of Mandela. There's a lot of literature online. There's books written about Nelson Mandela. And so the message to youth is learn about Mandela and several other leaders on the continent.
Now, Abdullah, one interesting thing about Nelson Mandela Day is that it encourages people to dedicate 67 minutes to community service. Why is this initiative significant, and what impact do you think this can have?
Abdullah, are you still with us? Abdullah Wada? I think we're having a bit of a communication issue, telecommunication issue with Abdullah this morning. But of course, we're talking about Nelson Mandela. Chiwetel, let me tell you the story that I said before when Mazina was here about me visiting Rhode Island prison where Mandela was at. And we're talking about history. And the tour guide was once a prisoner in there. So he had mentioned, because we're concerned, like, you know, going there, we're crying. I did cry.
Really?
Going in there and watching a prisoner tell his own story, having to see the bars they were at, having to see the menu for their food, how their food was measured. They had no shoes. You know, Rhode Island is so big, there are no gates. You know, it's an island. If you jump in there, a shark will eat you. So there was nowhere to escape to. So having... you know, see where Mandela slept and all that was very touching. And, you know, he did all that and came out to fight for freedom, to fight for reconciliation, to fight for oneness. And now we're seeing years after that we are not together. It's very, very heartbreaking. I love South Africa. I love their music. One of our closest friends and colleagues is South African. And, you know, just seeing that fight, you know, that argument for something so little, for something we can, it's like, for me, is it that the government have lost focus of what the aim was, which is one Africa?
It's quite interesting to see how things have turned out, because when you look at Mandela, you look at the fact that for so many years he fought for, you know, free Africa, not just free South Africa now, and then eventually coming out, and he only goes for one term. That blew my mind away, because that is totally different from what we're seeing now among African leaders. I mean, months ago, I did a monologue on the fact that, you know, we're having someone in power in some African countries for 40 years, 30 years, 3 decades, 4 decades, the same leader. And I'm like, this is not what it should be, right? We're not seeing that happen anymore. Back in the day, just like what Mandela did, the example he set was that he went on one term, right? He went on one term, and after that, that was it, right? But then again, we can see that some particular leaders in Africa today are actually almost making, you know, the presidency or the seat of power, you know, their base. And some of them are even moving as far as ensuring that when they leave, they put your son or their family members there. Yeah. So it's quite sad. And like Nigerians would say, you know, he just might be rolling in his grave now.
Well, I hope I did say Robben Island and not Rhode Island. I think I've been mixing some things up. So it's Robben Island. I beg your pardon if I did say wrong. Abdullah, are you back with us?
Yes, thank you. My apologies, the network seemed to have crashed. You asked me about youth, and Mandela has said, our youth are our greatest wealth.
Abdullah, I actually asked you, you had answered the question about the youths now. What I asked was something interesting that, you know, happens on Mandela Day, which is the fact that people are encouraged to dedicate 67 minutes to community service. And my question is, why is this initiative significant and what impact can it have?
So we've seen the significance where, firstly, it's an annual day for people not to forget about Mandela. We've seen companies on their own organizations, people just coming together and spending money and donating goods and bringing that spirit of Ubuntu. And the impact we've seen on large-scale programs, hundreds of thousands of children receive donations at daycare centers, homeless and street people assisted on this day. So although it's just one day in the year, no street child is going hungry on this day. And it's something we should encourage and make it a norm. So rolling up your sleeves for 67 minutes, which is more of a significance. And I think children and youth need to come together and not just be the beneficiaries of this programs for the day, but have their own programs and let schools be the driving factor. And I think 67 minutes, we can replicate it in Africa. If other countries are doing the exact same on this day, and it's something you don't forget. And it's a very small start to building communities. It's just something that I think it's a spirit of Mandela living on this day.
Right.
And so we do see the positive, and how it has actually impacted. And these sometimes annual donations, they can last for 3 to 6 months, if it's for a daycare center or for an old age home.
Well, Abdullah, before you go, I just want you to tell us, what do you think is the most important lesson Africa, our government, our youth must preserve from Nelson Mandela's legacy for future generations?
Mandela stressed on the importance of not only unity, but overcoming obstacles. And the quote earlier about courage and fear, and I think that's, the youth can overcome the fear of defeating challenges, however they exist. In some countries, we have civil war challenges. Others, we have colonial, we have apartheid in South Africa. They need to overcome their fear and step out. And I think his vision was that, and he knew that the current leaders of Africa will not be as good and strong as he was, or play according to what their role is supposed to be in society. And I think the lesson and the message is that let the youth remind us that compassion still exists.
Well, thank you so much, Abdullah Wada, for joining us and having this conversation about Nelson Mandela's legacy. And of course, his legacy is not measured only by the offices he held, but by the values he lived, service, courage, forgiveness, and the pursuit of justice. And as the continent marks Nelson Mandela's International Day, the challenge remains for leaders and citizens alike to turn those values into everyday action in building a more peaceful, united, and prosperous Africa. Thank you so much, Abdullah, for joining.
Well, very much.
Awesome. And that'll be all for us from Breakfast Extra. It was good having to host the show with you, Chiwete.
It was. I really enjoyed, of course, today's show. Started with your monologue and the issue you have with that telecom, communication office.
Sort it out real
They
quick.
need to, because this is not the first time people
Yes.
are complaining about that.
Yes.
And I know there was a time recently they had an event where they explained all of that, but it's beyond explanation. People
Yes.
want to buy data
Yes.
and be able to use it and
I
see
agree.
what they're paying and see what they're using, see where their money is going to, basically.
I don't know if you're on their side because you have their color, but anyway.
Oh, no, wow.
We'll be back tomorrow for the Sunday edition of Breakfast Extra. Thank you for joining us. Until tomorrow, see ya.
Bye.